Rehabilitation Training Program and received his Bronze Cross this past summer as part of our Exploration Program. So great, let's welcome Matthew. Do you want the microphone?
I think I'm similar to Amanda that I think I have a loud enough voice. Can you hear me at the back?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Maybe just a quick show of hands so I don't have to interrupt you. Would anyone like us to turn the air on? Is it warm in here?
No air.
You're comfortable? Okay, great.
Cool. Okay. So hello, my name is Matthew McKinnon. As the ladies introduced me, I am a survivor. Last summer was my last time at Camp Good Times, and I hopefully plan to come back as a lifeguard or any other kind of volunteer. I'm sure some of you have been volunteers with Camp Good Times and have been there to see just how amazing it is at Loon Lake every summer, and are fortunate enough to see all those young kids. So before I get into exactly what I've been through, I want to give you a brief history about me. Is this the right order? Oh, it is. So, wow, it's a very special pick. I'm sure a lot of you know about Brooke. You know, Brooke was a very dear friend of mine. I actually met her through a team group at Children's Hospital, and she was one of the first people that I ever really connected with outside of Surrey Memorial, where I did a lot of my treatment, since I am from Surrey. Anybody else? I didn't notice. I'm at the front. White Rock? Yeah, I'll give it to you.
I grew up in Surrey.
Where from?
Wally.
Oh. See, that's why Surrey has a bad rap. I'm Fleetwood. I'm in the nice part. So I'll touch a little bit on Brooke and I, but I'll get more into that later. But she was a very dear friend of mine, and you know, I got to see and talk with her at all the team groups we went to. She actually took me to Taylor Swift, and I believe this photo was actually that day. And we made a whole day of it. We went out to North Vancouver, went kayaking. I actually made a reservation for White Rock instead of North Van that I found out that day, and I had to actually luckily get some. And my friend Emil there, put your hand up, Emil. Emil is part of the UBC Cancer Association with his friend Cece, and really cool guy. He's also a survivor as well. So now let's get started. So I am the youngest of 6 kids. Big family, lots of support throughout my diagnosis. You know, this is me and my entire family, and actually my friend from Germany when we were over there. I'm the short, chubby little kid in the middle, kind of like a beaver. Again, just a photo of my family and just all of our love. So before I was diagnosed, I was a very active teenager. I played soccer from 5, I played football since grade 8, and here are just a couple of shots for me while I was playing football. It was actually during the spring football season of my grade 11 year that I began to experience the symptoms that led to my diagnosis. I had blurry vision, nausea, and pretty bad headaches. And that was all caused by the tumor putting pressure inside my brain, and it was located right around the pineal gland. Look into my doctor. So this is me at my sister's wedding, and that actually, is this a laser pointer? No. Oh, there. That's me on my last day of chemotherapy. So I'll go back to kind of my diagnosis quickly. Like I mentioned, I was in the middle of spring football while I was getting diagnosed. And it was quite interesting. There was a lot of foreshadowing prior to my diagnosis. I remember going to a chiropractor and him kind of feeling the flow of fluid in my brain and saying, you know, there's some sort of a blockage stopping the flow. It's a little odd. And I also remember going to my family doctor, and she gave me this anti-nauseant, and she warned, you know, not warned me, but told me, we typically only give this to cancer patients. You know, it's called ondansetron. I loved ondansetron for a long time after that, because I remember on June 8th, coming around to the time that I was diagnosed, I went down to VGH and got a CT scan. Now, as many of you may know, or some of you may know, I know my dear friend Emil knows, they do it in layers. Now, they found the blockage of fluid, but not the source, and they sent me home with medicine for sinusitis. Now, over that weekend, I had what could only be described as 2 seizures, on Saturday and Sunday. So Mom and Dad decide Monday morning we're going back for another CT scan. They did the full scan, and I wish I had brought a photo of it, because I actually got it from Dr. Cochran the day that I went in to see him. I had a photo of all 3. When I was diagnosed, after 2 rounds of chemotherapy, and after all of my chemotherapy. And it was really quite amazing to see that progression, and it's because of research, and it's because of volunteers, and it's because of fundraising, and it's because of donors that that was possible. And let me just see quickly. Okay. So the day of my second brain surgery, my sister Claire showed me a photo of two of her friends who were doing the Ride to Conquer Cancer that weekend. Now, as you know, the Ride to Conquer, some of you may know, being volunteers, like, has anyone volunteered with the Ride to Conquer Cancer, or done the Ride to Conquer Cancer? Ooh. Yes. So the Ride to Conquer Cancer is an amazing organization that every year riders go from the Cloverdale Fairgrounds to just outside of Seattle. It's a 2-day endeavor over, well, it's moved now the date, but it was over Father's Day weekend during my time that I was going through treatment. My sister asked me that day, she showed me a photo with two friends with my name on their wrists, and she asked me, Matt, do you want to do that a year later? And, whenever I tell this story, I always joke about how, it must have been the morphine that made me say yes, because it was an awful idea. No, it wasn't, but at the time it sounded like a good idea, which I think was the drugs. So here's a photo of my 3 sisters and my brother, who were all training for the ride together. Now, come the day of the ride, my brother decided that he'd rather volunteer than ride the 234 kilometers over the 2 days. So me and my 3 sisters all crossed the finish line together on Father's Day, exactly a year from the day that I had my second brain surgery. Little photo of me at my sister's for my graduation. During my treatment, I went through 6 rounds of chemotherapy, 30 sessions of radiation, 2 brain surgeries, all accumulating over the summer of my grade 11 to 12 and about halfway through to my grade 12 year. I was diagnosed on June 11th. I finished treatment on January 25th of 2013. I'm nearly 3 years finished treatment. So, very exciting. Thank you. This lovely group here is Emily, the eldest sister, Claire, Hannah, and me. So that was actually before my graduation. They all from other old graduates. Hannah would be proud of me for that. She has a lip. I'm not going to show her the video. And we all took photos. So this is actually one of my dear friends, Darren, who I met at Surrey Memorial. Now, does anybody know Darren Smith in any capacity? Okay, so he's an amazing young boy that was the second person I really got to know dearly. And he had a brain tumor as well. The only difference in our story was after his brain surgery, he could neither talk nor walk. Now, I met him while he was in this phase, and I saw him as he progressed out of it. I remember the first time he talked to me. That blew me away. And again, I'd just like to say, it's because of research, it's because of volunteers, and it's because of fundraising that he's able to now talk and walk. I don't know if he'll ever play football again. I know I will never play football again because brain tumors and football doesn't mix. And this one actually here was me and my sister at my very first Brain Tumor Foundation run event. And again, the ride, my dad, we had Happy Father's Day, Dad, across the front of our bikes as we crossed the finish line. And some of you, North Shore? Anybody? North Shore or Sunshine Coast? Anybody? This was a lady I met on the ride. By myself, I was riding up a hill. She had music playing. I passed her and I swung back. And she was actually a doctor, originally from England, living on the Sunshine Coast. And we spent the rest of the ride together. She was always ahead of me at the checkpoints. Very impressive woman. And this is actually, there's Emil again, and a few other people from Camp Good Times. But now, I guess a little bit more history about me. I do a lot of volunteer work. I started my own club, and I hope to repeat this from last year. But this was the very first young adult guys' night that I hosted. And we got 10 tickets to a suite for the Canucks. And here's my brother, my best friend, a few other guys from the survivors. And I'd just like to point out this fellow in the back, Scott Trapp. Now, when I finished my diagnosis, like I said again, it was for my treatment, it was on January 25th. It was around that time that I had a friend approach me whose mom had had a very serious battle with cancer, who told me that they had a family friend who was recently diagnosed with a brain tumor. So I went to Scott, and I got to sit and chat with him, tell him how it was for me, tell him about my treatment, my radiation, my chemotherapy, and just tell him that it's going to be okay, Scott. You're going to do just fine. He was a UBC student. He was in his first or second year, and he had a younger sister, Janelle. 2 weeks after this photo was taken, Scott passed away on December 26th. He's not the first friend that I've lost. He's not the last friend that I'll lose. Brooke was the last friend I lost from that photo at the beginning. Right? And one thing I'd like to share, just to kind of tie back to the research, I'm going to have a fun game with you. Okay? In 2012, when I was diagnosed, show of hands, just ask, or just even shout it out. What do you think my percentage of success was? Throw me a number. You know, so don't say anything. Pardon me?
70.
Higher.
85.
Higher.
95.
90. 90% success rate. Now in 2002, 10 years prior to I was diagnosed,